this gives also some impetus for our capabilities, they should be used and see. But still we see that in NATO it remains, but as I said, and that's what we are going, we see very positive for many countries that really to contribute more on that. Yes, thank you.
Mr. Grigoryan, if I can come to you and push a little bit further, as was mentioned that we are now witnessing structural shifts in Europe for taking care of our own security. And Europe, in a geopolitical terms, also includes Armenia. So how do you see from your side, would say a little bit away from the European Union, on the way to European Union, to correct myself, is this structural shift rhetoric, or is it a reality? How do you see that in Yerevan?
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to mention that the process or the way discussion goes in Europe and many other parts of the world today, we have started that a little bit earlier. Like it started in Armenia mostly after 2020 war, and after that, the way Armenia was very reluctant on security provision or security provided by others, it totally collapsed after 2020, and we have to look on other ways how we can provide our security. And one of the ways to provide security was this balancing and balanced foreign policy, and also very importantly diversification. Because the way we were very reluctant on one factor was hurting us a lot, and we have seen that it's very challenging to our security. So we started the diversification, and when we started pivot to the world, we have seen that there are a lot of opportunities. The way Armenia-EU relation is becoming stronger and stronger, it's because of the reason of diversification also. And it's very interesting. On highest level, there is always this statement that today Armenia-EU relation is stronger than ever. We can make it today. We did it 1 year ago. We did it 2 years ago, and I'm sure we will make it 6 months later or one year later, and continuously. I'm hoping that we will do that. And I think the way the geopolitics is changing, I'm seeing that more and more countries are concentrating on their capabilities to defend themselves. I wouldn't like to say that alliances are not working. There are still alliances are important, but it's also important to concentrate your own capabilities. It is like in extreme sport, like skiing. Those ones who are skiing in extreme, they don't know everything, all the holes, all the difficulties, but they have enough capabilities if there's challenges to overcome that. In current geopolitics or international relation or challenges that states are meeting, it's very difficult to predict. I am hearing that there is uncertainty, a lot of uncertainties. I don't think there was certainties back then in May, today is May 6th of 1990. No one was expecting what will happen in December of 1991. Or in many other instances, I mean, it was not possible to see beyond a few months, is like in 2008, 2001. But the most important thing becomes, as I think always has been, that how state capability is enough to meet those challenges in its own, but also in partnership. So those two factors become very important. I don't want, again, to say that alliances, we should not put trust on alliances, no, or in partnership, but we should have both of them, own capability and in partnership to resolve all those challenges that states are now meeting. It's so much also interesting how $110 trillion world GDP is dependent on a small strait. The strait could challenge the whole concept of energy security, and everyone is now reassessing their energy security. Everyone tries to find alternative. Again, diversification is one of the major agenda of everyone. And Armenia, for the last few years, major agenda was diversification, to have as much alternatives. And in market, it's like that. Monopolies are bad. In geopolitics also, monopolies are challenging. You should always have alternatives. That's the, that's the major message for today's world.
I agree with you. It's own capabilities, but also alliances are important. And you mentioned the extreme sport, and Slovenians are known that we are good in the extreme, although we are very small, but it's always team behind the extreme is also to succeed. Nobody can do it on his or her own. Can we move on a little bit now to the new forms of power? And I would like to ask Professor Piccolo about that. We were discussing these shifts and the new forms of power, from the AI to the digital infrastructure, the capital. They are beyond state control, mostly. So how that influence the shift, or how do we understand in Europe, in European Union, this shift?
Madam Ambassador, thank you so much, and to the organizers, thank you so much for having me this morning on the panel. What we are seeing is a rather complex, I would say, a complex intertwine of three elements that are intertwined in a sense. First of all, militarily, when we speak, we're living in the unipolar world. However you take it, it's still unipolar, with one very strong and the only capable force that can intervene anywhere if it wants in the world. It's the only capable force that is there in the world. Secondly, and this is already a profound tension, economically, we don't have a unipolar world anymore. We're living in the multipolar world, where we have a developing and hugely and quickly developing Asian economies, African economies, BRICS economies, and so on. And of course, Europe's still large economic capacity. So this is multipolar. But then, as you're asking, Madam Ambassador, we are moving into a world that is not polar anymore. It doesn't have any centers. This is the challenge. Because the new world is the world of data flows, is the world of blockchain, is the world of AI that doesn't come from a very clear center. And the tensions between these three layers, at least these three layers, if you can have them, are causing the storms, as the organizers have so nicely put the current situation. I think what the EU needs to look into, if that is the question, is exactly these new forms of power. We know that we have to build militarily. We know that we have to do it economically. But then there are new forms where we are lagging behind. It isn't just about regulating. It's also like a Digital Services Act. It's about developing new ones. This is where we are at this moment. This is where we have to be at the forefront. Because if we'll be dealing, of course we have to deal with military, of course we have to deal with economic, no doubt about it. But then again, we have to find energy and we have to find the strength to be dealing also with structural issues of new forms of power. Because otherwise, someone else will define it for us, and someone else will make the rules of the game. And if someone else makes the rules of the game, we'll again be lagging behind in the new accumulation strategies. This is what happened to China in 1750s, because they were too slow in adapting industrial form of production. They were simply too slow. And that set them back for roughly 200 years, even 230 years. And this is where we are. And this is what Europe really needs to think strong about it. Because these are new forms of not just capital accumulation. Yes, there are new forms of capital accumulation, but also new forms of dominance, new forms of power. That's why blockchain, AI, data flows, etc., etc. This is the new oil, if you want. Okay, oil is back now that the Strait of Hormuz is being blocked twice. But, you know, the structural changes are happening elsewhere. And this is where I see, and I'm rather critical about it. We in Europe, we know how to regulate, but we don't do enough on producing our own. We don't do enough on participating in setting the standards, setting the structures of the new forms of power.
Thank you. We will return to this kind of question a little bit later and the dominance. But let me go to the Minister Braže now and ask her, as Professor Picalo was talking about also the instruments of power, the security, technology, the economic leverage, the political cohesion. You are sitting at the Foreign Affairs Council, you are a foreign minister, you travel with the president, with the prime minister, speaking to the leaders. Where does Europe, in your opinion, today have a real capacity to act? And maybe if you can identify the most critical gaps.
I think a big change was the Lisbon Treaty of 2010. which changed the decision-making in the EU, which added European Parliament as co-decision maker, which from one hand has slowed down the decision-making, especially on the issues like technology or simplification of regulations, or, you know, it just takes much longer to come to the decisions, whereas it was a commission representing the treaties, you know, and the whole of EU interest and the member states before. Now we have the parliament as co-decision maker. So the trialogues are lasting forever sometimes, you know, so it's just not there. But sometimes European Parliament, like on the energy security and the repower, actually plays a very positive role. They pushed the Council to agree to leave the Russian dependency a year earlier, so from 1st January next year. But that is something that by the nature makes Europe different, EU different from other parts of the globe and structures of the globe. And I'm torn between the speed where we need, especially on defense, security, technology, on the AI, on, you know, letting our enterprises thrive and compete in the world, where I have the feeling we are holding them back because of that slower decision making and lack of sort of response to their needs. From other hand, of course, it makes us more resilient, because that is the nature of democracies, to include those various groups, the interest groups, you know, the businesses, those concerned about privacy or others in the decision making, to make sure that we come at something that is then accepted by everyone in our societies. So I think this is where, in the current age where security and defense decisions have to be made very fast, Also, we have to find a legislative way how to change that. That on security defense issues, we should have a fast-track decision. At least that we have made at a national level, and where also procurement or impact assessment decisions are made much faster to make sure that we are able to respond at the speed of relevance. And that would help for all of us in a wider European continent, not just the EU itself, to also compete in the world. Because indeed, Professor is right. One is the hard powers, the national defense. Nobody has replaced those capabilities. That's why 5% for defense. From other hand, it's technological superiority, and it's not purely military anymore. Quite opposite, it comes from the other parts of the society, and as quicker we can transfer the scientific, the innovative knowledge, from those who have invented that into practical capabilities, which mostly is dual use anyway, with data and everything, space, quantum, and so on and so forth, as more successful we will be as democratic countries. And that is a big and difficult conversation to have, because that would mean not including all the groups on whom the impact will be in the decision making. So at the national level, we have sorted it. We have very good, we have pooled university top minds together in the quantum community, which has joined NATO quantum community, which has a safe space to experiment, to develop. We have the support mechanisms for the companies to develop and fail and start again, and to enable them to compete. That's why, for example, the whole autonomous system ecosystems that we have has been literally very, very successful. But again, we need the EU also on the simplification agenda to be much faster, much faster.
Mr. Grigoryan, how do you feel that here in Armenia you are aspiring member? I mean, you are aspiring country for the EU membership. How do you see that? What I was asking Foreign Minister, the power, influence, and dominance of the European Union.
Very positively, if in short. But I think it was rightly mentioned by the professor that there is no center in global politics, and it makes things harder. If back then in 17th century it wouldn't be a North Star, it would be very difficult to navigate. So, but at the same time, we should get used to that. As I mentioned, for the last few years, Armenia-EU relation has transformed hugely. I would dare to say even a revolution happened between Armenia and the EU, and we continuously say that Armenia-EU relation is stronger than ever. And we will continue working in this direction and make efforts. But in this context, I would like also to mention that how geopolitics is becoming also complicated. Also taking into consideration our region. We have been able to transform the region in the context of being perceived as a conflict region, from that point to the peaceful region where yesterday EU president calls investors to come to Armenia. That's a shift. That's again a revolution that happened in the region, and we hope and we are sure that we will continue in this direction. And first of all, institutionalizing peace with Azerbaijan, but at the same time being an island as a stability, I mean the region being an island, attracts more attention, and all the countries from the region and all the people from the region are benefiting from this, and we will continue. We see in this navigation EU as a very important partner to navigate in these difficult times, but at the same time we are building partnership with other partners. That's very important for us because in this fragile world, you need to work to have a 360-degree view. That's very much important.
The idea that Europe fully protects its values and rapidly build power sounds neat, right? But it's, in practice, the tension is real. So my question to both of you, Deputy Minister and Professor Picalo, systems that generate dominance, especially AI and digital and capital, tend to reward scale, speed. Minister Brage mentioned that we are lacking speed sometimes in the European Union, while our European values emphasize the right, accountability and constraint. And those two naturally move not at the same pace. So can Europe turn its values into a source of power? That's a question to both of you. Yeah, Madam Deputy Minister.
It should, if you want to become strong and really to maintain, or I wouldn't say dominance, but this, which is always driving power with Europe was, and for centuries, especially the last century, we should do that as well. Because sometimes I think we also, our strength became in some extent our weakness. All the well-being and got used to good life, if you heard that was also a weakness, because the world went far faster without human regulations, without looking to the, as you mentioned, values or something like that. So is that. So we had to catch up. But it's not only values as well. What we said now, the technologies also showed we live in a completely different world. Also our interdependence. We cannot even see the new technologies is not Europe or none of the countries is independent completely free to do what is. Even critical minerals, all these chips, and so it's also showed how much we develop. So if dependent on each other. So Europe has to also wake up and to those who how to, unfortunately, be less dependent and how to develop faster. Yes, I think we have to sacrifice some of our achievements and or social welfare. Some countries say how we can put so much GDP money for defense or some technologies if we have very big social welfare, and it would be. But I think it's that moment when we have to decide as well if you want to advance, and we have to invest in some maybe sometimes not so popular internal social policies, or we have to just to rely on the old. So,
Professor Picalo, can Europe have both?
I think we can, but there's one obstacle that we rarely speak about. And I'm a little bit unorthodox even in my country for saying this, but our biggest developmental challenge is actually demographics. You see, when I was born in 1975, there were 33,000 births in my country. Last year, there were 16,500. So only half of the births that we used to have. So this is to our way of life, to the European way of life, to the European challenges. This is, to me, the biggest developmental issue that we have, demographics. Because our systems, from social systems you were mentioning, education systems, all the systems are basically based on this. So we will need to work on the demographics, but not just on the demographics directly, but broadly speaking, because together that makes one of the biggest challenges that we have. But if we're talking about raison d'être of the European Union, I think it has showed very nicely to conclude on a very positive note that Europe can build to my understanding, something that we again rarely speak about, and that is European public values, public goods. These public goods are something that cannot be acquired locally in our communities. These are public goods that cannot be acquired even nationally in our states. They are European public goods, from European security to European universities, to European research networks, to European, transportation corridors. All of these are European public goods. And where I think it's worth working is developing these European public goods even further. This is where I see aim, security, again, research, transportation, all of those things. And this is where we have proven to be good, and this is where we can still add, and to my understanding, obviously the hindrance is our demography, but we can develop on further development of European public goods, and with this, our quality of life, the way we live, the European style of living, etc., can thrive even further.
Yeah, I just wanted to add also a sort of perspective on overall sort of relationship and the speed how EU has been positively able to react and respond and also have an impact, and that is on the external trade dimension. That after the change from the US administration and the first tariffs announcement, it was a very fast reaction, reaching out to Mercosur again, reaching out to Indonesia, reaching out to Australia, and actually EU has been able to conclude quite a number of significant trade deals, which again then provides the opportunities for our economies, businesses, especially on Mercosur, like, some of our companies trading there, they currently have 30% tariff. So from the provisional application from 1st of May, that is gone. Yeah. So, and that is impact, that is that positive impact, and that's where the speed, because it's Commission's competence, where the speed actually mattered. And of course then when the Council had to decide, we did have that qualified majority at the Council, and the European Parliament with only 10 votes decided to postpone it, but we still managed. So there are positive ways on which to reflect, but on technology, data, and the future capabilities, I think we need to step up in a very unorthodox way, because it's not your usual regulation and legislation. This is something that is much beyond and much different.
We have 5 minutes to conclude because we started a little bit late, and I will ask a very simple question to all of you for the end. As we are celebrating Europe Day, the birthday in 3 days, what would be one wish you have for the European Union? What's one thing EU should do in the next year or two to retain its position as a global actor? And maybe from the Armenian point of view, starting with that, what would you advise the EU does?
It would be very difficult for Armenia to advise Europe what to do, but I would like to go through 3 points that I think very important in the current geopolitical context. First of all of that, I think there is no center. There are centers is very much important, and in that context there is no North Stars to navigate. There are stars, and we have to adapt to this in international relations. Second, I see there is a lot of estimation of AI. I think the way in the beginning of 20th century electricity changed the current life, it didn't change the geopolitics. It changed the way life was organized. I wouldn't like to expect much from AI that it will also change geopolitics. It will impact, but the geopolitics, it will not change the human nature and mainly the geopolitics. The third is, I think, very much important. I think quantum physics have changed our thinking of the physical atmosphere. We should think that photon is a wave and a particle. It's wave perception of the subjects in international relations too. It's very difficult to now precisely define with one, because our thinking is usually like that way. We want to be precise something, but it can be double of something, you know, like a photon being a wave and being a particle. And this is a way of thinking that can be helpful in current geopolitics.
Professor Picalo, what's your birthday wish for the European Union?
That we remind ourselves more often that no matter what, but this is the greatest sui generis, supranational political community that ever existed in human existence. This is something that we don't remind ourselves enough. And what it needs to do is just needs to rethink or think, adapt, and above all, lead, and not be self-depreciating, because there's no point in being self-depreciating if you are doing. But that does not mean that you rest on your, you know, on your laureates or your previous things. You just have to, you know, lead, so to speak.
Deputy Minister Plepite.
I think you're reading my mind as well. That's why I was saying, yes, I think for the EU, trust in themselves as well, to know the strategic really aims, goals, and to have strong decisions to become the strong actor regionally and globally. We have capabilities, we have power. Sometimes we are going to nitty-gritty daily basis, not to that. So to talk and to increase as well, to enlarge, to have new members, which should also make sure that they make also us stronger, all of us.
Minister Braže.
I think I'll be very practical. On security defense issues, indeed, solving the differences with the US and transatlantic sort of community where Europe and the US, Canada and others work together very closely. And that also relates to wider European community, whether it's the South Caucasus and whether it's regions around Turkey, and just to really overcome also those decision makings within the organizations that sometimes slow down political cohesion. And making sure that for the EU itself, we are really ready and armed to make decisions faster in the situations when it's necessary. Like, as I said, like it was with some trade deals, but also with the 19 billion and so on and so forth for Ukraine. And I think then we are okay.
The end of summer, 31st August, 1st of September in Slovenia. For those who haven't been, Slovenia is the only country with love in its name, so welcome. You will find a lot of love there. And with that, please join me in the round of applause to my wonderful panelists.